The world of the 1930s was a powder keg waiting to explode. The aftermath of World War I had left deep scars on the global landscape. Economic turmoil gripped many countries, fueling political instability and social unrest. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to ensure peace, instead sowed the seeds of future conflict. In Germany, the Weimar Republic teetered on the brink of collapse. Hyperinflation wiped out savings and livelihoods. The German people, once proud and prosperous, now faced humiliation and hardship. This created fertile ground for extremist ideologies to take root and flourish. Meanwhile, the United States withdrew into isolationism. The Great Depression of 1929 had devastated the American economy. In the Far East, Japan embarked on a path of militarism and expansion. The stage was set for a conflict that would engulf the entire world. As the 1930s progressed, three nations emerged as the primary aggressors on the world stage. In Germany, Adolf Hitler and his Nazi party rose to power in 1933. Hitler's charismatic speeches and promises of restoring German greatness resonated with a population eager for change. The Nazis quickly consolidated their control, transforming Germany into a totalitarian state. Italy, under the leadership of Benito Mussolini, had already embraced fascism in the 1920s. Mussolini's vision of a new Roman Empire appealed to Italian nationalism. In Japan, militarists gradually gained control of the government. The military leadership pursued an aggressive policy of expansion in Asia. These three powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, would eventually form the Axis alliance. Their actions in the coming years would push the world closer to the brink of war. The final countdown to war began in March 1938 with the Anschluss, Germany's annexation of Austria. Hitler, emboldened by the lack of resistance, turned his attention to Czechoslovakia. The Munich Agreement of September 1938 ceded the Sudetenland to Germany. On September 1, 1939, German forces invaded Poland. This act of aggression crossed a line that Britain and France could no longer ignore. 2 days later, on September 3rd, both countries declared war on Germany. World War II had officially begun. The Polish campaign introduced the world to blitzkrieg, or lightning war. German tanks and mechanized infantry, supported by dive bombers, swept across Poland with devastating speed and force. Warsaw fell on September 27th, and by October 6th, Poland had been divided between Germany and the Soviet Union. For the moment, an eerie calm settled over Europe. This period, known as the Phony War, lasted from September 1939 to April 1940. The war that would reshape the world had only just begun. The spring of 1940 saw the end of the Phony War as Germany unleashed its military might on Western Europe. On April 9th, German forces invaded Denmark and Norway. Denmark capitulated within hours. Norway, despite Allied assistance, fell by June. On May 10th, the main German offensive began. The Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg were quickly overrun. The real target, however, was France. The French and British had expected an attack through Belgium, similar to Germany's strategy in World War I. They were caught off guard when the main German thrust came through the Ardennes forest. The speed and ferocity of the German advance shattered Allied defences. The evacuation of Dunkirk saved over 338,000 Allied troops from capture. Paris fell on June 14th, and France officially surrendered on June 22nd. The fall of France marked a dark moment for the Allies. With France defeated, Hitler turned his attention to Britain. Operation Sea Lion, the planned invasion of the British Isles, hinged on gaining air superiority. The Battle of Britain began in July 1940. The German Luftwaffe launched massive air raids against RAF airfields and radar stations. British pilots, outnumbered but fighting over home territory, put up fierce resistance. The tide turned when Germany shifted its focus to bombing London and other cities. By October, it was clear that the Luftwaffe had failed to gain the necessary air superiority. Hitler postponed Operation Sea Lion indefinitely. Meanwhile, Hitler's attention turned eastward. On June 22, 1941, Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union. Over 3 million Axis soldiers poured across the border. The Soviets, caught by surprise despite warnings, suffered massive losses in the early months of the campaign. By December 1941, German forces were at the gates of Moscow. The failure to take Moscow marked the first major setback for the German war machine. While Europe burned, conflict was also brewing in the Pacific. Japan, emboldened by its alliance with Germany and Italy, continued its expansion in Asia. Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. The attack devastated the American naval base in Hawaii. The next day, President Roosevelt asked Congress for a declaration of war against Japan. The attack on Pearl Harbor brought the United States fully into World War II. Germany and Italy declared war on the US on December 11th. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 marked the beginning of America's island-hopping campaign. As 1942 progressed, the Allies gained momentum on multiple fronts. In North Africa, British forces defeated Rommel's Afrika Korps at El Alamein. This victory, combined with Operation Torch, marked the beginning of the end for Axis power in Africa. On the Eastern Front, the Battle of Stalingrad was a turning point. In November, a Soviet counteroffensive encircled the German forces. Despite orders to fight to the last man, the Sixth Army surrendered in February 1943. It was a devastating blow to German morale. In the Pacific, the Allies adopted island hopping. The Battle of Guadalcanal secured a crucial base for further operations. On June 6, 1944, the Allies launched Operation Overlord. Despite fierce resistance, the Allies established a beachhead in Normandy. While battles raged across the globe, a different kind of war was being waged behind the lines. The Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million European Jews, stands as one of the darkest chapters in human history. It was the culmination of years of Nazi racial ideology and anti-Semitism. The process began with discrimination and segregation. Jews were stripped of their rights, their property, and their dignity. As Nazi conquests spread across Europe, millions of Jews found themselves under German control. Jews were forced into ghettos and camps where conditions were horrific. In 1941, the Nazis began implementing the final solution. Death camps were constructed, equipped with gas chambers and crematoria. Millions were transported to these camps and murdered upon arrival. The full extent of the Holocaust only became apparent as Allied forces liberated the camps in 1944 and 1945. The Holocaust forever changed our understanding of human nature and the depths of evil possible in the modern world. As 1945 dawned, the end of the war was in sight. German forces were in retreat on all fronts. In the east, the Soviet Red Army pushed relentlessly towards Berlin. In the west, Allied forces, having liberated France, pressed into Germany itself. On April 30th, 1945, as Soviet troops fought their way through the streets of Berlin, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. A week later, on May 7th, Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was over, but in the Pacific, fighting continued. Despite facing certain defeat, Japan refused to surrender. On August 6, 1945, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on Hiroshima. 3 days later, a second bomb devastated Nagasaki. Faced with this new and terrifying weapon, Japan finally surrendered on August 15th. World War II was over. The world that emerged from the ashes of World War II was fundamentally changed.